For years, I imagined this moment would feel like relief or triumph or even fear. Instead, it felt neutral, as if my body had known long before my calendar did. That surprised me, and it told me something important. The work had already done its shaping. I didn't know I was learning this lesson at the time. Most of the important ones don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly, disguised as frustration, or impatience, or certainty, and only years later do they reveal what they were really teaching. 3 years. 3 years since I last heard the click of my badge entering the corporate lobby, since I last felt the quiet tension of a Monday morning meeting, or the private relief of a project finally delivered. 42 years. It sounds like a lifetime, doesn't it? And in many ways, it was. More than 15,000 mornings of coffee, commutes, and conversations that started with, "Let's circle back." A life built under fluorescent lights, shaped by ambition, compromise, and the steady rhythm of proving myself again and again. I remember walking into my first office in 1980, nervous, polished, clutching a leather portfolio like a shield. I didn't know it then, but I was stepping into a version of myself I'd spent decades both building and trying to protect. Now, in the profound quiet of a Tuesday morning that belongs entirely to me, with no alarms, no action items, just the soft hum of the kettle and birds outside, I have been looking back. Not at the awards or the titles. Those fade faster than we expect. I have been thinking about the choices, the small, almost invisible ones, the emails I chose to send and the ones I deleted unsent, the times I said yes when I meant no, and the rare, trembling moments I finally said no and meant it, and the moments that quietly changed everything. If I could reach back through time to the eager, hopeful woman in 1982, or even the battle-worn version of myself in 2010, what would I tell myself to keep doing? And what, with the gift of hindsight, would I gently but firmly tell myself to stop doing? First, I would tell myself this without hesitation. Learn the system before you try to change it. In my early 30s, I was impatient. I could see inefficiencies everywhere, and I wanted to fix them immediately. I remember drafting a 10-page proposal to overhaul our client onboarding process, only to learn, weeks later, that the inefficiency was actually a workaround for a legal constraint no one had mentioned. But I learned, sometimes painfully, that every system exists for a reason. Or at least it did once. Maybe it was a response to a crisis long forgotten. Maybe it protected someone's fragile sense of control. So I stayed quiet long enough to understand the unwritten rules. Who influenced decisions was often not the person with the fanciest title. Which conversations mattered and which ones were just noise dressed up as strategy. That patience wasn't about conformity. It was strategy. And when I finally spoke, my words carried weight, not because I was louder, but because I understood the foundation I was standing on. And more importantly, I had earned the trust to help rebuild it. Next, I would remind myself to invest relentlessly in skills that outlived the job itself. Titles change, companies merge, software becomes obsolete, but skills, the real ones, stay. I spent countless nights learning things no one had asked me to learn yet, Sitting in hotel rooms, laptop balanced on my knees, teaching myself tools I hoped I'd need someday. And more than once, those skills saved me when departments disappeared, when priorities shifted, when stability vanished overnight. Those skills were the only things I truly owned. They weren't tied to a desk or a logo. They belonged to me. Understanding the system didn't make me smaller. It made me precise. And precision, I learned, is a quiet kind of power. And I would tell myself this too, which is something I didn't fully appreciate until much later. Seek out and nurture the quiet allies, not the loud champions who take credit, but the steady ones who notice your work and remember it. The colleague who quietly passes you a key piece of context before a meeting. The mentor who writes a note of encouragement after a tough quarter. These relationships aren't built on grand gestures, but on small acts of consistency. A follow-up email, a shared laugh in the hallway, the courage to say, "I don't know. Can you help me understand?" In a world obsessed with networks and visibility, never underestimate the power of a few trusted voices who see you, not just your output. Because when the ground shifts, and it always does, those are the hands that reach back for you. Here's what I would stop doing. I would stop measuring my worth by how useful I was. For years, I treated exhaustion like proof of commitment. Full calendars felt like validation. Empty ones? Guilt. I remember skipping my niece's school play because of a critical deadline, only to realize years later that the deadline was forgotten by lunchtime, but she still remembers I wasn't there. No one ever tells you when the line shifts or when dedication quietly turns into depletion. I missed moments I can't get back, thinking there would be time later. There usually isn't. Work will always take what you give it. Life, on the other hand, waits to be noticed. And sometimes just being present with no agenda, no deliverable, is the most valuable thing you can offer. And I would stop shrinking myself to make others comfortable. For too long, I softened my ideas with disclaimers. That something might be silly, but I'm probably wrong, but as if confidence were arrogance and clarity a threat. My thoughts were always punctuated by buts. I didn't realize I was training others to hear my voice through a filter of doubt until a young teammate said to me, years later, "I never knew how smart you were until you stopped prefacing everything with an apology. Your presence isn't a burden. Your perspective isn't just one view. It's yours." And it matters, especially when it's spoken without apology. And finally, I would stop waiting. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to be chosen. Waiting for someone else to say, "Now you can." Confidence doesn't arrive fully formed. It grows in motion. Every meaningful step I took began before I felt prepared, and often before anyone noticed. Starting that side project, asking for the stretch assignment, saying I'm done when the job stopped serving my soul. Permission, I learned, is rarely given. It's claimed. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply begin before you've been invited. If I could tell myself back then one last thing, it wouldn't be how to climb faster. It would be this: pay attention. The life you're building isn't only in the milestones. It's in the quiet mornings, the pauses between breaths, The way sunlight hits your desk in the afternoon, the same angle, year after year. It's in the coffee you drink while reading a novel on a workday you stole for yourself. In the walk you took when you canceled a meeting to clear your head. These moments don't appear in performance reviews, but they stitch together the fabric of a life well lived. And one day, when the badge comes off for the last time, you'll want to recognize the person who remains. Not just the one who succeeded, but the one who finally came home to themselves.